I have been talking a lot about Hedera over the last couple of days, watching the chart closely for that big sign of relief. And well, I do think that we finally got it. The market has been heating up over the last couple of days, and I've been talking about this potentially being the bottom for a lot of these projects in this space. And it feels as if HBAR has found its bottom. I think I'm pretty confident about calling it as well. And the reason why I say that is because of a few things. Number one, let's look back here into the May highs. All right, HBAR did dip down into the May highs. However, if we're looking at this on the 3-day, we never broke those highs. We maintained around those highs, and now we're seeing a big break. The biggest sign, though, is on the daily, because we did get that major moving average cross, which we've talked about. Right here we have the cross. I did outline it on the chart as well. This was on September 7th. And then we started to break to the upside, and we were waiting for this trend line to get broken over, and boom, we got a daily candle close break over this, and we now have cleared this completely. Now, what is next? Well, typically, I would love to see a potential retest of the trend line, and then we start to see a big break to the upside. So retesting this trend line, it's not a guarantee. We don't need to do it. However, I would like to see it. It would just be healthy to, see that for price action. But I'm definitely watching these levels up here, right? This roughly 25.5-cent level to clear the midline, clear this high going all the way back to August. That way we can start to build back to those highs from, July, and then also going all the way back to January. But HBAR looks absolutely beautiful here on this chart. This is something that we've been talking about. And also, by the way, even on the lower time frame structure, like on the 12-hour, I mean, guys, HBAR was building out a floor going all the way back here to, September 1st. So this floor has now been formed. We're starting to flip the midline here on the 12-hour as well. Strength is starting to build on HBAR. I'm very, very happy about this price action. I think that almost any HBAR holder should be watching this chart closely and really kind of, I would say, realizing how bullish it is, because we just squeezed on this. We were squeezing on this going all the way back to July, the middle and towards like the end of July, and we finally now broke over that trend line. So I'm watching this closely, especially leading into the weekly candle close. And then also next week, we do have that big update from the Fed, which could ignite things even more on these charts. So yeah, I'm very excited about what's happening around HBAR right now. And also, by the way, I mean, trading volume is up almost 50%. Yes, it's positive and negative price action. However, it is starting to build up some volume here. And when we look at the all-time chart here, it looks like HBAR really wants higher. So I'm watching, waiting, and I'm just kind of really just being very patient here when it comes to HBAR and a lot of these altcoin charts breaking out. But beyond that, we did get a big update. So big shout to HBAR Tata. We have 7 new Hedera RWAs listed on RWA.xyz. Tokenized money market funds from Archax Exchange are now live. Next up, full TVL figures. Now, we just talked about this update yesterday with these institutional pool tokens. These are very significant. We talked about it briefly. We, went over all of the connections back to Archax. But the biggest thing about this is we're still waiting for the value to hit RWA.xyz, because although, yes, these announcements are great, they don't really mean nothing if we can't track them on chain. So there's now 15 assets on Hedera on RWA.xyz. A lot of this is coming from Archax as well as Kaio. So right off the rip, in terms of the platforms, let me just look at this real quick. So with Archax, we have the Aberdeen Liquidity Fund, Sterling Fund, right? This is non-US government debt. Then we have the LGIM US Dollar Liquidity Fund, the Fidelity ILF, the United States Dollar Fund. This is also another Lux fund with Aberdeen. This is the US Dollar Fund. This one is the Sterling. And then we also have the BlackRock ICS US Treasury Fund, the State Street GBP Liquidity LVNAV Fund, and then also State Street USD Liquidity LVNAV Fund as well. And then also outside of that, we do have a few other ones, right? Now, these ones down here are all institutional funds, as well as US Treasuries and commodities. I love this. And we also have, of course, real estate with Red Swan. So there's kind of a mix between certain assets here, but I'm very excited to see how much money is tied to Hedera here because, we've been watching and waiting for Hedera to be added to this list and see how much value is tied to it. Because if we're looking at that top, 10, the top 10 has about $356 million tied to it. If Hedera, and if we go back in time and look at all of the announcements, if Hedera has $1 billion tied to it, that's immediately a top 4 project. And technically, we can wipe out ZK Sync error because that is a layer 2. It's technically a top 3 project by RWA value on chain. So that's why we are watching this closely. Now, beyond that, we also got a big update from Hedera, and this is Hedera's global policy officer dives into UK stablecoins and global crypto trends. This is something that I think we need to watch for because a lot of people have kind of written off the idea of Hedera being a top tier player in this space for payments and stablecoin use cases, which I find absolutely insane. I feel like it does come from a biased point of view. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love XRP. I love what Ripple is doing, but they're not going to be the only players for stablecoins and payment initiatives. We do know that Hedera has been absolutely killing the game around stablecoin initiatives. Now, when we think about that, we also go back to what recently was said about US stablecoins, which was Putin's advisor claims US using stablecoins, gold, and this is all to devalue its $37 trillion debt. This was a huge statement because what this showed the world is that the US is going heavy into stablecoins. Now, if we're thinking about this and if we're thinking about how big US stablecoins have become, I mean, even if we go back over here to RWA.xyz and we just go to stablecoins, almost $280 billion. I think that if we go back over here to Tether and we just scroll down to stablecoins, I mean, stablecoins themselves just crossed $300 billion for the first time in history. So stablecoins are not like this small niche thing in crypto only now. No, stablecoins are becoming absolutely massive to the point where no one can ignore them anymore. So if we're thinking about this, yeah, the UK better step on the gas and get the ball rolling because they are risking losing major traction here around stablecoin initiatives, especially when we go back in like time to 2022, 2023, where the UK said that they want to become a crypto hub. Well, guess what? What better time than now to get the ball rolling and really get a stablecoin out? We have yet to see, a digital pound on chain. So I would love to see this. I think that this would be great. And also, by the way, this kind of goes back to August where we saw crypto firms urging the UK to form a national stablecoin strategy to avoid falling behind the US. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure on the US. And it seems as though, listen, if we're thinking about Hedera and the UK launching a stablecoin, why can't the UK launch a digital pound on Hedera? Think about it. If we're thinking about this logically, the Philippine banks back in January of this year, right, there was a big update. Philippine banks are now collaborating to launch the PHPX stablecoin for real-time remittances, leveraging Hedera's DLT network for cross-border payment solutions. This was a huge announcement. We have yet to hear any news on this. However, this was a clear confirmation that, Hedera is a big player around stablecoins. And then also, more recently, Wyoming, the state of Wyoming, chose Hedera to host FRNT, the first US state-issued stablecoin backed by dollars and treasuries. Another huge sign that momentum around Hedera is building for stablecoins. And then, on top of that, we also have the Australian digital dollar launches on Hedera, becoming the first, or the network's first commercial implementation of the Hedera Stablecoin Studio. So yeah, listen, when we're thinking about this, we are 100% fully locked in on stablecoin initiatives for Hedera. This is why when we think about a digital pound, yeah, Hedera could definitely be at the top of the list for a big network being chosen for something like the digital pound. We already know how scalable Hedera is. We already know how efficient Hedera is for, financial transactions. So this would just be another big update. And it would also be another big expansion around the Stablecoin Studio as well. So I'm definitely focused on that. Now, what about DeFi on Hedera? Because, we have been talking about DeFi on Hedera for quite some time. I do think that this is something almost everyone should be paying attention to as well if you hold HBAR. $121 million on Hedera. 2.76% gain in 24 hours. Nothing too crazy there. However, this has been starting to make some, moves to the upside. And I do think that we're kind of carving out a path back to those all-time highs going back to January of this year at about roughly $214 million. But the difference here is I really think that we can blow that $200 million out of the water here. On this next big move, I do think that we can target $1 billion. I know that sounds crazy because, hey, we're at $121 million right now. However, if we're thinking about all of these big players, right? SushiSwap, Bonzo, Libre, all of these. Like, for an example, Libre Capital. If we're going over here to RWA.xyz, Libre Capital is bringing a ton of money onto Hedera. There currently is 6 institutional funds in the waiting room waiting to get added to RWA.xyz in terms of value that will impact the DeFi space for Hedera. But also, Bonzo Finance and SushiSwap are both working on some pretty significant updates. We just got a big update from SushiSwap, which was audit of our ERC20 to HTS wrapper by Omnicia SEC is complete. All findings have been resolved with no outstanding remediations. The contract is deployed on Hedera mainnet and the final product integrations will conclude this week. Again, they continue to build and expand the DEX, but also we just got a big update regarding the mobile audit as well, the mobile app. This is something I think is going to also wake up DeFi TVL on Hedera in a massive way. And then, of course, last but not least, Bonzo Finance. They just had their full-on audit complete with Halborn Security. This is also another massive milestone as they are getting closer to launching Bonzo Vaults on the liquidity layer of Hedera. So there's a lot of DeFi movement here around Hedera. And also, by the way, Bonzo Finance is one of the cleanest platforms that we have on Hedera currently. I mean, there's a ton of money tied into Bonzo Finance, and it's because of how clean it is, how simple it is, how easy it is. But this is what I mean, right? Like the entire ecosystem around Hedera just continues to heat up more and more and more. And I do think that TVL on Hedera is also going to surge while we start to see a bigger breakout on the chart. And with everything happening around Hedera, I do think that we're getting closer and closer to that big moment. And by the way, I do think that a much larger moment is once we start to see RWA value tied back to Hedera getting tracked, because I think that this is going to bring in so many people to the Hedera ecosystem that just didn't know what Hedera was doing this entire time, because we've been focused on this. The tokenization moves have been starting and I would say heating up since going all the way back to 2022. That's how long this has been going on for. So 3 years of tokenization growth getting added to RWA.xyz for the first time for Hedera. I'm very excited to see how much money is going to be tied back to the Hedera ecosystem around tokenized value. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, notifications on because of more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out, guys.